Hello and welcome back to the Astro Talk Podcast. I'm your host Andrew, and today we're talking about the X-Men relaunch following the Krakoan era.
Good intro.
If you didn't know, at the end of 2019, Jonathan Hickman reinvented the X-Men, bringing them into a new golden age. He gave the mutants immortality in an island nation. On the reinvention of the X-Men, Jonathan Hickman has this to say: "We wanted to sell the idea that this was what we're going to be doing for the next few years." So if you want to read X-Men books during the run from late July through September, House of X and Powers of 10 are the only new X books available, and everything that's going to follow is based on them. We wanted to be clear to fans, to the stories, and just as importantly to the creators who are going to be staffing these books in the future. We wanted the message to be very clear. This is a whole new era for the X-Men. This is what we're doing now. After Jonathan Hickman wrote Inferno, he departed the X-Men creative team, leaving the line in the capable hands of Gerry Duggan and Kieran Gillen. Together, the two would finish the story that Hickman started. The beginning of the end of Krakoa appeared in the very last Hellfire Gala, a gala hosted by the Hellfire Trading Company to improve Krakoa's relationships with foreign nations. On the last Hellfire Gala, Gerry Duggan had this to say: "I always approach these Hellfire Galas as act breaks and one big story, and here it is. 5 years later, we're now executing ideas specifically in the Hellfire Gala that were part of year one story sessions on the street after the X-Men creators retreat on our way from a dinner to a pub. Things that have been a part of this since Marauders was called X-Men Buccaneers as a placeholder. This story talked about in this quote was the fall of X. In the Hellfire Gala one-shot, the villainous organization Orchis attacked the mutants at the gala, forced all the mutants to pass through gates, taking them to the White Hot Room, and killed Jean Grey. The mutants regrouped and destroyed Orchis in the series Fall of the House of X / Rise of the Powers of 10. In the same series, Jean Grey was revived with the power of the Phoenix Force. In X-Men number 35, the island of Krakoa would leave the Earth for the White Hot Room, carrying any mutants who no longer wanted to stay on Earth." This brings us to the new X-Men relaunch titled From the Ashes, in reference to the classic X-Men tale of the same name. At the time of this writing, only 3 comics have come out: X-Men, Phoenix, and NYX. So far, the relaunch does not seem to connect in any way to the classic From the Ashes storyline. The new relaunch currently includes X-Men, Phoenix, NYX, X-Force, Avengers, Uncanny X-Men, X-Factor, Exceptional X-Men, Wolverine, Storm, Dazzler, Sentinels, Mystique, and an unannounced Psylocke series. Jed MacKay, Gail Simone, and Eve L. Ewing are at the forefront of the relaunch with their respective X-Men titles. The relaunch takes the X-Men back to basics after the destruction of Orchis and the loss of Krakoa. So let's take a look at the 3 comics released so far individually. The X-Men relaunch officially starts with the chief of the Merle Police Department, Paula Robbins, entering an X-Sentinel making factory. There she meets a time-displaced Beast who replaced the mainline Beast at the end of X-Force's previous run. Paula is a little confused to see Beast because she expected to see Cyclops. Beast fills us in that Cyclops is on a mission with Magic, Temper, Juggernaut, Psylocke, and Kid Omega. They take the ship, the Marauder, to a remnant base of Orchis. Meanwhile, in Merle, Alaska, Beast is showing Paula around the X-Men's new base. He takes Paula to see their garden where she meets Glob. The X-Men's mission is revealed to be saving Wolverine from this remnant of Orchis called Fourth School. The X-Men successfully find Wolverine as Paula is introduced to Magneto, floating in a Professor X-like chair. Before the X-Men can leave the Orchis compound, they have to fight Orchis members who have successfully given themselves mutations. After the fight, the X-Men return to Alaska, where Wolverine departs the team. The issue ends with Beast filling Cyclops in on the tour he gave Paula, and the reveal that the X-Men saved Merle from a Sentinel attack. All in all, this issue's premise is simple. You don't need very much experience with the X-Men to understand the plot, and I think that's this issue's greatest strength. However, If you are a longtime fan and reader, you may find the story very similar to Bendis' era books. That's not helped by the Alaska setting. Bendis' run on X-Men is very divisive and has since been called the Lost Decade. If you don't like Bendis' run or have been a long-time reader, this issue likely won't be for you. If you are brand new to the X-Men and like Ryan Stegman's art, you will probably love this issue. This issue starts with Jean Grey Phoenix saving a world by absorbing excess energy from a star, while there is narration by a young girl named Adani about how the universe views the Phoenix with fear. Meanwhile, across space, Richard Rider Nova is trying to save the prisoners on a prison ship from falling into a black hole. The black hole causes the ship's system to go wonky, causing a villain known as Morg to be set free. Jean has a heartfelt conversation with Cyclops before she has to depart to help the prison ship after hearing its distress call. This is where we learn that Jean has the Blackbird even though she's a cosmic entity that can fly and live in the vacuum of space. Elsewhere on the prison ship, Pericus finds a way to escape and kills someone over it. At the same time, Jean Grey arrives on the ship and stops Morg's attack by burying him in the ship's debris. Jean talks to Richard Rider to get a sense of the situation and decides she needs to regulate the black hole's energy, something she admits to never doing before. Even after an impressive display of power, Jean was not able to stabilize the black hole, so she had to help evacuate the prison ship, giving Pericus the opportunity to escape. This issue ends with Pericus landing on Adani's planet and killing her father. Now, it is important to note that this issue is at the center of a tracing scandal, and after looking at the evidence, I do think some of the panels were traced. I don't necessarily think every instance of tracing being claimed is correct, but some panels are undeniable. With that being said, the art for this issue is much better than the art in X-Men #1, in my opinion. This issue feels kind of basic in terms of Marvel Cosmic stories, but it's certainly entertaining. I honestly think the biggest problem with this issue is that Jean could be replaced with any cosmic energy-based Marvel character, and the story would be just fine. Really, one part of the story feels like an X-Men story, and that's when Jean is talking to Cyclops. I don't think this story is bad by any means, but I don't think it's the best Jean Grey story by a long shot. This issue starts with Kamala Khan monologuing at Bruno over the phone on her way to class. During her monologue, she quotes Taylor Swift. "It's me, hi, I'm the problem. It's Kamala Khan." She meets Sophie Cuckoo on her way to class, and the two become fast friends. The class turns out to be taught by Prodigy. Sophie takes offense to Prodigy teaching because she feels it was a PR move by the school because they felt bad about the mutant massacre. After class, Sophie and Kamala head to a club where Sophie introduces Kamala to a Knoll. At the club, Sophie and Kamala get into a fight with a new anti-mutant group called the Truth Seekers. The fight ends when Kamala and Sophie get kicked out of the club. Kamala calls Prodigy to see if he can help her unlock one of the Truth Seekers' phones, but it turns out she can do it on her own. Then Kamala meets Wolverine and the two get into a fight. Wolverine is acting very out of character and has some very unclear motives. It seems like the two should be on the same side, but aren't for some unexplained reason. Then Kamala sees a train station explode, and while she's helping people to safety, she meets the Krakoan, who was built up as a big mystery character but will be revealed by the end of the issue. She doesn't really fight the Krakoan, he just kind of leaves. Afterwards, she meets up with Sophie again before heading home. The issue ends with the reveal that the Krakoan, actually Hellion, is working with Empath and all of the Stepford Cuckoos except for Sophie. This issue feels like things are just happening to a lot of the characters with a lack of clear vision. Even though this is a team book, it feels more like a Miss Marvel book with Sophie Cuckoo as a supporting character. I think in the summary I mentioned a Knoll and Wolverine once and Prodigy twice. Honestly, that's because they weren't really in it. The Krakoan feels redundant after Uncanny Avengers, where the villain was Captain Krakoa. The reveal in general doesn't make sense because they all relate to Emma Frost, but she's in a different book. What I did like about this issue was how they told the reader what was important to know about Krakoa in case you hadn't read those books. Using Prodigy to fill in those gaps was super creative. It didn't pull me out of the story. My biggest problems with this comic were that 3/5 of the team feels like an afterthought. There wasn't a mystery around the villain like the advertisement promises, and most of the themes were very overt. The X-Men have always faced bigotry, and both this comic and Jed MacKay's X-Men deal with it in some way. The difference is this story has outright bigots who are bigoted for the sake of showing bigotry towards mutants, while in X-Men, we see that people are frightened, even unintentionally, by physically changed mutants. We also see that the Sentinel Factory gave people jobs, so the X-Men are indirectly responsible for an unemployment spike in the area that they're living in. That gives the reader a connection and understanding to people's hatred towards them, even though it is misplaced. In this story, there's no time for that because it's constantly on to the next thing. There is a definite pacing issue in this book. We spend a long time on Kamala monologuing instead of needed explanation for Wolverine's views or really seeing any more of the main characters in this book. How is this new era of X-Men? Well, so far it's a mediocre mixed bag of concepts and execution. None of the stories are really standout, and none of them feel connected. Coming off the heels of the most connected the X-Men line has ever felt, the new comics can feel jarring. With comic prices increasing, you really need to wow readers for them to stay loyal to the series they're reading. These issues, unfortunately, didn't wow me. And I've been seeing a similar sentiment shared online. It's not that any of these issues are bad. They just don't live up to the expectations that fans had. While I think that disconnection is not a good thing, others might enjoy it because there's less of an obligation to read all the X books coming out. I think a lot of the books struggle from being number ones, especially X-Men. X-Men feels like it needed to get number one out of the way so it could start building up to its own story. As far as number ones go, X-Men and Phoenix are pretty solid. They feel like paint by numbers, but they have potential. NYX, on the other hand, felt unpolished. Most of the main characters barely show up, and there is no team. The team isn't even assembled by the end of the issue. That's not good for a number one because it doesn't hook the reader like it should. Is this new era new reader friendly? Yes, that's this era's biggest strength. X-Men and Phoenix feel like you don't need any prior knowledge, except big robots bad. Everything else they fill you in on. NYX feels like you need a little more knowledge about Krakoa, but does a really good job on catching the reader up on that knowledge through organic storytelling. However, this new relaunch feels like an overcorrection for Krakoa. The Krakoan era was revolutionary not because of resurrection or the nation of Krakoa, but because the writers worked together, were on the same page, and helped each other craft a single narrative through multiple books. From the Ashes lacks that cohesion. And it makes me wonder if the creatives of the book even talk to each other at all, or if editorial just gave them characters to work with and said, have fun. But those are just my thoughts, and I want to hear yours. So comment down below if you liked the issues, if you thought they were newcomer friendly or not. Are you a new fan of the X-Men? Do you feel like this era is too similar to Bendis? Let me know everything down below. While you're down there, don't forget to like and subscribe for more comic-related reviews and discussions.